I am 28 years old. My sister Clara is 24. For my entire life, I have been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who smoothed things over. Clara was the storm. Our parents were the beautiful, sturdy house that looked perfect from the street. No one ever knew what the weather was like inside. I thought I did. I thought I knew all the secrets, all the cracks in the foundation. I was wrong. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday. It was a normal day. I was at my desk, finishing a report. My phone buzzed. It was a number I did not know. I almost ignored it. I am glad I did not. A man's voice, low and serious, asked if I was me. I said yes. He told me he was Detective Miller. He was with the city police. My heart started to beat fast. I asked him if something was wrong, if someone was hurt. He said no one was hurt, but he needed me to come down to the station. He said it was about my sister, Clara. I asked what she did. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She confessed to something. It would be better to discuss this in person." I felt a cold dread spread through me. What had she done now? It was always something with Clara. A broken rule, a loud fight, a dramatic exit. But the police? This was new. This was serious. I told the detective I would be there as soon as I could. I packed up my things at work. My boss asked if everything was okay. I told him it was a family emergency. He nodded with a look of sympathy. He did not know my family. He did not know that our emergencies were not like other people's. They were carefully constructed events. I drove to the station with my hands gripping the steering wheel. What could she have confessed to? Stealing? Vandalism? Something worse? My mind raced through a dozen terrible possibilities. Each one felt both impossible and entirely believable when it came to my sister. Before I went to the station, I called my parents. I knew I had to. It was part of my job. I was the family messenger, the first responder. My mother answered on the second ring. Her voice was light and cheerful. She was probably in her garden. She loved her garden. It was perfect, just like everything else she presented to the world. I told her the police had called me. I told her it was about Clara. Her cheerful tone vanished. It was replaced by a sharp, anxious sound. "What happened?" she asked. I told her I did not know the details. I just knew Clara had confessed to something, and I needed to go to the station. My mother was silent for a long moment. I could hear her breathing. Then she said, "Your father and I will meet you there. Do not speak to anyone until we arrive." It was not a request. It was an order. I told her okay. I hung up the phone. Her words echoed in my head. Do not speak to anyone. It was always about control, about managing the story. They were not worried about Clara. They were worried about how this would look, how it would affect their perfect image. I felt a familiar wave of resentment wash over me. I pushed it down. I had a role to play. I always did. I arrived at the police station first. It was a cold, sterile building. The air smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. I told the officer at the front desk who I was. He told me to have a seat. Detective Miller would be with me shortly. I sat on a hard plastic chair and waited. My parents walked in 10 minutes later. My father looked stern and impatient. My mother looked worried, but her face was a carefully arranged mask of concern. She scanned the waiting room, her eyes darting around as if looking for reporters. There were none. This was not a television drama. This was our life. "Did you say anything?" My mother asked me in a harsh whisper. I shook my head. "Good," she said. "We will handle this. Clara is just being dramatic. She is probably making things up for attention." My father nodded in agreement. "She has always been this way," he said. "Volatile, unpredictable. She doesn't think about how her actions affect the family." They spoke about her as if she were a problem to be solved, not a person in trouble. I said nothing. I just sat there. caught between my duty to my sister and my lifelong habit of obeying my parents. Detective Miller finally came out to get us. He was a tall man with tired eyes. He looked at my parents, then at me. "I would like to speak with him alone first," he said, nodding toward me. My mother immediately protested. "Absolutely not," she said. "We are her parents. He is her brother. We are a family. We will speak with you together." The detective did not flinch. He looked at her calmly. "Ma'am, right now he is just a potential witness. Your daughter has made some serious allegations. It is better this way." My father placed a hand on my mother's arm. "Let him talk to the boy," he said. "We will be right here." My mother looked furious, but she backed down. She gave me a look. It was a warning. "Be careful what you say." I followed Detective Miller into a small, windowless room. There was a metal table and 3 chairs. He told me to sit down. He sat across from me. He opened a file, but he did not look at it. He just looked at me. "Your sister Clara is in a lot of trouble," he began. I nodded. I was ready for this. I was ready to hear what she had done. He continued. "She worked as a bookkeeper for a small local company. Over the past 6 months, over $100,000 has gone missing from their accounts." My stomach dropped. $100,000. This was not a cry for attention. This was a felony. "She came in this morning," the detective said. "She confessed to embezzling the money. She said she took it in small amounts over time, hiding the transfers." I could not breathe. Clara was not a thief. She was impulsive and reckless, but I never thought she was capable of something like this. Something so calculated. "Why?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. "Why would she do that?" Detective Miller leaned forward slightly. His tired eyes seemed to see right through me. "That is where this gets complicated," he said. "At first, she said she was being blackmailed. Then she changed her story." I waited. The silence in the room was heavy. "She told us your parents are the real criminals," he said. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My parents? The pillars of the community? The perfect couple with the perfect house and the perfect garden? It was absurd. It was the most Clara thing I had ever heard. A desperate, wild lie to shift the blame. I almost laughed. "That is ridiculous," I said. "My parents would never do something like that. She is not well. She makes things up." The detective just watched me. He did not agree or disagree. He let my words hang in the air. Then he said the sentence that broke my world apart. "She said they were drowning in debt and forced her to steal the money to cover for them." He paused. "Then she slid this diary across the table." He pushed a thin, leather-bound book across the table toward me. It was Clara's diary. I recognized it immediately. She had carried it with her everywhere for years. "She said this proves everything," the detective said. "She said it details the whole plan. And it names you. She says you were the mastermind behind it all." I stared at the diary. My mind went blank. Me? The mastermind? I was the one who paid my bills on time. I was the one who had a savings account. I was the one who bailed Clara out of her small troubles, who loaned her money she never paid back, who tried to keep the peace between her and our parents. I looked up at the detective. He saw the shock on my face. He saw the utter disbelief. "She claims you planned the whole thing," he said, his voice flat. "You figured out how to take the money, and you convinced her to do it. You told her how to hide it. She says you and your parents threatened her. You used her, and she is not going to take the fall for you." I felt sick. It was a lie. A monstrous, twisted lie. But why? Why would Clara do this to me? I had always protected her. I had always been on her side, even when she was wrong. I thought back to my parents in the waiting room, their immediate dismissal of her. Their focus on appearances. A dark thought began to form in my mind. Was it possible? Could my parents be involved? Could they be in that much trouble? No, it was impossible. This was Clara. She was lashing out. She was hurt and scared, and she was dragging everyone down with her. But why me? Why would she name me as the leader? That is a lie, I said to the detective. My voice was shaking. I had nothing to do with this. I did not even know she worked for that company. I have not seen her in weeks. Detective Miller nodded slowly. She said you would deny it, he said. She said you are good at pretending, that you have been playing the part of the good son your whole life, but it is all an act. Every word was a knife. Clara knew me. She knew how to hurt me. She was using my own personality, my own history against me. The quiet one. The responsible one. It was all a cover, she was claiming, for a cold, calculating criminal. The detective leaned back in his chair. Look, son, he said. Right now, this is just her word against yours. And her diary. He tapped the leather-bound book. We are going to have to investigate these claims. All of them. The ones about your parents and the ones about you. I felt a surge of panic. My life, my job, my reputation. It could all be destroyed by this. By a book of lies. Can I see her? I asked. I need to talk to her. The detective shook his head. Not right now, he said. She is being processed. And frankly, I do not think she wants to see you. He stood up. I need to get a statement from you. A formal one. And I need to talk to your parents. The interview was over. I had walked into this station worried about my sister. I was walking out of this room as a potential suspect in a federal crime. I felt dizzy. As I walked back to the waiting room, my parents stood up immediately. My mother's eyes searched my face for answers. What did he say? She demanded. What is going on? I looked at her. I looked at my father. Their faces were masks of parental concern. But for the first time in my life, I wondered what was behind them. I told them everything. I told them about the embezzlement, the $100,000. I told them Clara was blaming them. I watched their faces. My mother gasped, a hand flying to her chest in a theatrical gesture of shock. She what? She cried. How could she say such a thing? We gave her everything. My father's face hardened. She is a liar, he said, his voice low and cold. She has always been a liar. They were playing their parts perfectly, the wounded, betrayed parents. Then I delivered the final blow. She also blamed me, I said. She told them I was the mastermind. She gave them her diary as proof. My mother stared at me, her mouth slightly open. For a second, I saw something in her eyes. Not surprise. Not shock. It looked like fear. Then it was gone, replaced by outrage. You? She said. That is insane. You have never broken a rule in your life. The police cannot possibly believe that. My father shook his head, his jaw tight. This is a nightmare, he muttered. A complete nightmare. We were escorted to another room to give our statements. My parents went first, together. I waited outside. I could hear my mother's raised voice through the door. She was selling her performance. The distraught mother of a troubled child. When it was my turn, I sat down and told the truth. I told them I had no knowledge of any of it. I gave them my alibis. I offered them access to my bank accounts, my phone records, anything they needed. I was an open book. I had nothing to hide. Or so I thought. When we finally left the station hours later, the sun was setting. The air was cold. My parents were quiet on the ride home. It was a tense, heavy silence. When we got back to their house, my mother turned to me. We need to present a united front, she said. This is Clara's mess. She has had a breakdown. We need to hire the best lawyer and get her the help she needs. And we will clear your name, of course. She said it like it was an afterthought. Clearing my name was just part of the larger project of managing the family's reputation. My father nodded. "She is our daughter," he said, though his voice lacked any warmth. "We have to protect her, and we have to protect the family." Protect the family. That was their mantra. It meant protecting the image, protecting the secrets. I looked at both of them, standing in their perfectly decorated living room, and a terrifying question took root in my mind. What if Clara was not lying? Not about everything, anyway. What if they really were in trouble? And what if they were willing to sacrifice both of their children to save themselves? I pushed the thought away. It was too ugly, too monstrous. But it was there, and it would not leave. The next few days were a blur. I could not sleep. I could not eat. I went to work and stared at my computer screen, unable to focus. My colleagues knew something was wrong, but I could not bring myself to tell them what it was. How could I? How could I explain that my own sister was trying to send me to prison? That my own family was at the center of a criminal investigation? I felt isolated, alone. My parents called me every day. They were all action and strategy. They had hired a high-powered lawyer for Clara, a man named Mr. Davenport. They had also retained a lawyer for the family to handle the reputational damage, as my mother called it. They kept telling me not to worry. "The truth will come out," my father said confidently. "They have no evidence against you because there is nothing to find." But I was worried. I was terrified. A diary, Clara's words. It was a story. And sometimes, a good story is all it takes. I needed to do something. I could not just sit back and trust that the system would work. Not when my own family was so broken. I decided I needed to understand what was in that diary. I needed to know exactly what lies she was telling. I needed to find a way to disprove them. I called Detective Miller. I asked him if I could see a copy of the diary. He told me it was evidence. He could not release it to me. But he did say something interesting. "Your sister is very specific in her entries," he said. "Dates, times, conversations. She claims you had secret meetings, that you gave her instructions." Secret meetings? Instructions? It was so detailed, so elaborate. It did not sound like something Clara would come up with on her own. She was chaotic and emotional, not a meticulous planner. This was someone else's work. My parents insisted we have a family strategy meeting, just the three of us. We sat at their large mahogany dining table. It was the same table where we had celebrated birthdays and holidays. Now, it felt like a war room. My mother had a notepad. She had written a list. "First, we need to establish a timeline of Clara's instability," she said. "We need to talk to her old teachers, her friends, anyone who can attest to her erratic behavior." My father agreed. "We need to paint a picture of a troubled young woman who is not a reliable narrator." They were not trying to help Clara. They were building a case against her. They were preparing to destroy her credibility to save their own. I listened to them, my stomach churning. They spoke about their own daughter with such cold detachment. It was all about strategy, optics, damage control. I asked them about their finances. The question came out of my mouth before I could stop it. "Clara claimed you were in debt," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is there any truth to that?" My mother's eyes flashed with anger. "Of course not," she snapped. "That is a vicious lie. Your father has a very successful business. We are quite comfortable." My father's face was unreadable. He just stared at his hands, which were folded on the table. "Our finances are fine," he said quietly. "Clara is delusional." But something was off. My father was a proud man. He loved to talk about his success. The fact that he was so quiet, so subdued, was a red flag. My mother, on the other hand, was too defensive. Her reaction was too quick, too angry. It was the reaction of someone who had been hit too close to the truth. I decided to push a little harder. "So you would have no problem showing the police your bank records? To prove she is lying?" I asked. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother glared at me. Why would we do that? She said. We are the victims here. We do not need to prove anything. It would help me, I said. If she is accusing all of us, proving she lied about you would make her lies about me seem less credible. My father finally looked up. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? We will do what our lawyer advises, he said, his voice firm. It was a non-answer. He was shutting down the conversation. I knew then. They were hiding something. I did not know what it was. But they were not being honest. And if they were lying about their finances, what else were they lying about? That night, I went home and started digging. I did not know what I was looking for. I just knew I had to find something. I started with things I had access to. Old family photos, letters, documents. I was looking for a crack in the perfect facade. I found an old bank statement for a joint account my parents had set up for me and Clara when we were kids. It had been dormant for years. I had forgotten all about it. I went online, tried to log in. I guessed the password. It was our childhood dog's name. I was in. The account was mostly empty, as I expected. But as I scrolled through the transaction history, I saw something strange. About a year ago, there had been a large withdrawal. $10,000. It was transferred to an account I did not recognize. The memo line just said loan repayment. A loan? My parents had always been proud of being debt-free. Why would they have a secret loan? And why would they pay it from a dormant children's savings account? It made no sense. It was a small thing, a tiny inconsistency. But it was a thread, and I knew I had to pull on it. I decided to call my aunt, my mother's sister, Sarah. They were not close. My mother always said Sarah was irresponsible with money. They had a falling out years ago over their parents' inheritance. I had always taken my mother's side. Now, I was not so sure. I called Sarah. She was surprised to hear from me. I told her I just wanted to catch up. We made small talk for a few minutes. Then I carefully brought up the subject of my parents. I asked her if she knew if they had ever had money troubles. Sarah laughed. It was a bitter sound. Money troubles? She said. Your mother would rather die than admit to having money troubles. To her, it is the ultimate failure. But let me tell you something. Your father is not as good with money as he pretends to be. He likes to take risks. Big ones. I asked her what she meant. He had a business venture that failed spectacularly about 10 years ago, she said. He lost almost everything. Your mother had to use her entire inheritance to bail him out. That is why she resents me. Because I know the truth. They have been living on a razor's edge ever since, pretending to be wealthy. Her words confirmed my suspicions. My parents' perfect life was a house of cards. They were not comfortable. They were desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. The $10,000 withdrawal, the secret loan, it was all starting to connect. But it was still a long way from forcing their daughter to embezzle $100,000. I needed more. I needed to know the full extent of their problem. I thanked Sarah for her honesty. She told me to be careful. Your mother is a survivor, she said. She will do anything to protect herself. Anything. I hung up the phone, my mind reeling. My entire life, I had believed a story. The story of the perfect family, the successful father, the elegant mother, the responsible son, the troubled daughter. It was a simple, neat story, but it was a lie. We were not a family. We were a collection of actors playing roles. And I was the only one who did not know it was a performance. I felt a cold anger begin to replace my fear. They had lied to me. They had used me. And now, they were going to let me take the fall to protect their secrets. I decided then and there that I was done playing my part. I was done being the good son. I was going to find the truth, no matter how ugly it was. The first step was getting a lawyer. Not a family lawyer focused on reputation, but my own lawyer. Someone who would fight for me. I asked a trusted colleague for a recommendation. He gave me the name of a woman named Miss Albright. He said she was tough, smart, and did not back down. She was exactly what I needed. I called her office and made an appointment for the next day. I spent the rest of the night gathering everything I had. The old bank statement, the notes from my conversation with my aunt. It was not much, but it was a start. I met Ms. Albright in her small, neat office. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I told her the entire story, from the first phone call from Detective Miller to my conversation with my aunt. I told her about the diary, the accusations, and my parents' strange, defensive behavior. She listened patiently, taking notes without saying a word. When I was finished, she looked at me for a long moment. "So, your sister says you are a criminal mastermind," she said, her voice dry. "And your parents say they are perfect victims, and you are caught in the middle." I nodded. "That is about right," I said. "I believe you," she said simply. I felt a wave of relief so intense it almost made me cry. It was the first time someone had said that to me. The first time I felt like I was not completely alone in this nightmare. "But believing you and proving your innocence are two different things," she continued. "A diary is a powerful piece of evidence. It is a written narrative. We need a counter-narrative, a stronger one. The truth." She leaned forward. "Your parents are lying," she said. "I can feel it. The question is, what are they hiding? A failed business is one thing. A $100,000 hole is something else entirely." She told me what we needed to do. We needed to get a copy of that diary. Her office would file a motion for discovery immediately. We also needed to dig into my parents' finances. Deeply. She said my suspicions about my father were probably correct. Men like your father, who are obsessed with the appearance of success, often have secret vices, she said. Gambling, bad investments. Something that bleeds them dry while they pretend everything is fine. Her words chilled me. A gambling problem? It seemed so out of character for my stoic, controlled father. But then again, I was realizing I did not know my parents at all. "Is there any way you can get access to his private records?" Ms. Albright asked. "Computer files? Personal emails?" I thought for a moment. There was an old desktop computer in my father's home office. He used it for his personal correspondence. He was not very tech-savvy. He probably used a simple password. I remembered him grumbling once about having to remember so many passwords. He said he just used the same one for everything to make it easy. It was the name of his first car, a 1968 Mustang. I knew it. I told Ms. Albright. She raised an eyebrow. "That could be our key," she said. "But you have to be careful. If they know you are looking, they will lock everything down." I left her office feeling a sense of purpose for the first time in days. I had a plan. I had an ally. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with determination. I was going to uncover the truth. That evening, I went to my parents' house for dinner. It was my mother's idea. She said we needed to maintain a sense of normalcy. The dinner was excruciating. The tension was so thick I could barely swallow my food. They talked about trivial things. The weather, the neighbors, a television show. They did not mention Clara. They did not mention the police. It was a masterclass in denial. After dinner, I made an excuse. I told them I needed to print a document for work and my printer was broken. I asked if I could use the computer in the office. My mother hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Of course, dear," she said. "You know where it is." I went into the small, wood-paneled office. It smelled like old books and my father's cologne. I sat down in his leather chair. My heart was pounding. I turned on the computer. The screen flickered to life. I opened the web browser and went to his email login page. I typed in his email address. Then I typed in the password. Mustang 68. I held my breath and clicked enter. I was in. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his inbox. It was mostly junk mail and newsletters. But then I saw a folder on the side. It was labeled Personal. I clicked on it. The folder was full of emails, hundreds of them. They were from online betting sites, from bookies, from people with names like Shark and Vinny. There were emails demanding payment, emails with threats, veiled threats at first, then more and more explicit. We know where you live. We know you have a family. I started opening them, reading them one by one. The story they told was horrifying. My father had a severe, long-term gambling addiction. He had been losing money for years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had taken out secret loans. He had maxed out credit cards. He had sold off assets without my mother knowing. He was not just in debt. He was drowning in it. The loan sharks were closing in. The threats were becoming more serious. The timeline was damning. The most frantic, threatening emails started about 7 months ago, right before the embezzlement at Clara's job began. I found one email from my father to a man named Vinny. It was dated 6 months ago. It said, "I have a solution. I am getting the money. I just need one more week. I promise you will be paid in full." 1 week later, according to the police, the first large sum of money disappeared from Clara's employer. It was all there. The motive, the timeline, the desperation. My father was not just a proud man with a failed business. He was a gambling addict who had run out of options. He had turned to his own daughter to bail him out, forcing her into a life of crime to cover his tracks. But what about me? Why was I in the diary? Why was I the mastermind? It did not make sense. Unless my father was not the only one involved in the plan. I kept digging through the emails. I found a separate email chain between my father and my mother. It was on a different account, one I did not know my mother had. The subject line was the C plan, C for Clara. My blood ran cold. I opened the first email. It was from my mother. It read, "She has agreed. She is scared, but she will do it. We need to make sure she knows exactly what to say if she gets caught." I scrolled through the chain. They had planned everything. They coached Clara on how to steal the money. They told her how to cover her tracks. And they came up with a contingency plan, the diary. My mother's emails were chillingly practical. She was the real mastermind. She wrote, "We need a failsafe. If it goes wrong, she cannot take us down with her. We need a different story, one that makes her a victim." My father replied, "A victim of who?" My mother's response was a single line, a line that sealed my fate in their minds. A victim of her manipulative older brother. I felt like I could not breathe. I was their failsafe, their scapegoat. The plan was never just about getting the money. It was about creating a story that would protect them at all costs. If Clara got caught, she would blame me. She would use the diary my mother had helped her create. They would paint her as a poor, impressionable girl who was controlled by her cruel brother. They would sacrifice me to save themselves, my own parents. I felt a wave of nausea. I closed the browser, my mind numb with shock and betrayal. I had to get out of there. I walked out of the office. My parents were in the living room watching television. They looked up at me. "All done?" My mother asked, smiling. It was the same smile she had given me my whole life. The loving, maternal smile. It had always made me feel safe. Now, it looked like the smile of a predator. I nodded. I could not speak. I told them I was tired and had to go home. My father walked me to the door. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Do not worry, son," he said. "We will get through this. We are a family." I looked him in the eye. I saw nothing. Just a hollow man hiding behind a mask of fatherly concern. I drove home in a daze. The anger I had felt before was gone. It was replaced by something colder, a quiet, focused rage. They had underestimated me. They had always seen me as the quiet one, the compliant one, the one who would do anything to keep the peace. They thought I would be an easy sacrifice. They were wrong. I was not going to be their scapegoat. I was going to expose them. I was going to tear down their perfect house brick by brick. The peacemaker was gone. A fighter had taken his place. The next morning, I went to Ms. Albright's office. I did not call ahead. I just showed up. Her assistant tried to stop me, but I walked right into her office. I was carrying my laptop. I found it, I said. I found everything. I sat down and I showed her. The emails from the loan sharks, the threats, the evidence of the gambling addiction, and then the email chain between my parents, the C plan. I watched her face as she read. Her expression shifted from professional curiosity to grim concentration, and finally, to cold anger. When she was done, she looked up at me. "This is worse than I imagined," she said. "They weren't just covering up a debt, they were building a conspiracy. And you were the designated fall guy from the very beginning." She stood up and began to pace around her office. "This changes everything. This is not just about defending you anymore. This is about going on the offensive." She stopped and looked at me. "What do you want to do?" she asked. It was a simple question, but the answer was complex. What did I want? I wanted justice. I wanted them to pay for what they had done. To me, to Clara. "I want them exposed," I said, my voice hard. "I want everyone to know who they really are." Ms. Albright nodded. "Good," she said. "That is what we will do, but we have to be smart about this. We cannot just dump these emails on the police. Your parents will claim you hacked them. They will say you fabricated them to save yourself. We need more. We need something they cannot deny." She tapped her pen on her desk. "The diary," she said. "We need that diary. We need to see what they wrote. We need to find their fingerprints on it, metaphorically speaking." Her office had already filed the motion. A few days later, we received a copy. It was a scanned PDF file. Ms. Albright and I sat in her conference room and went through it, page by page. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. The entries were filled with details of my supposed crimes. There were descriptions of secret meetings in parks and late-night phone calls. There were quotes of things I had supposedly said, things that made me sound like a cold, cruel monster. "He told me if I did not do it, he would tell everyone my secret," one entry read. I had no idea what secret she was even talking about. It was all fiction. But as I read, I started to notice something. Certain phrases, certain ways of describing things. They sounded familiar. "You need to get a handle on your affairs. This is for the good of the family. Do not be hysterical." These were my mother's phrases. She had been saying them my whole life. It was her voice coming through Clara's pen. I pointed it out to Ms. Albright. She nodded slowly. "This is good," she said. "It is circumstantial, but it is a pattern. It shows influence, coaching." Then I saw something that made my heart stop. It was an entry from about 2 months ago. It described a meeting where I supposedly gave Clara a large sum of cash, her first cut of the stolen money. The diary entry described the location in vivid detail. A small, independent coffee shop on the other side of town. It mentioned the time. A specific Tuesday afternoon. It even described what I was wearing. It was a very convincing lie. Except for one thing. I had never been to that coffee shop in my life. And on that specific Tuesday afternoon, I was not in town. I was hundreds of miles away at a mandatory work conference. And I had proof. I had my plane tickets, my hotel receipts, my conference registration. I even had photos on my phone from the conference, time-stamped and geotagged. There was a picture of me and my colleagues at a dinner that very night. I could not have been in that coffee shop. The diary was not just a book of lies. It was a book of sloppy lies. My mother, in her arrogance, had invented a detail that I could concretely disprove. It was the first solid crack in their story. "This is it," Ms. Albright said, a grim smile on her face. "This is the lie that will unravel everything else. They got greedy. They added too much detail. And they made a mistake." We now had a defense, a strong one. We could prove the diary was a fabrication, but it was not enough for me. Proving my innocence would leave my parents untouched. They would simply pivot. They would claim Clara was a fantasist who had made everything up, including their involvement. They would walk away clean, leaving Clara to take the full blame. I could not let that happen. I needed to find something that would pin this on them directly, something that would expose my mother as the true mastermind. I thought back to my aunt's words. Your mother is a survivor. She will do anything to protect herself. A survivor. Survivors always have an escape plan, an exit strategy. My mother was meticulous. She would not have orchestrated a crime like this without ensuring she had a way out if things went wrong. She would have a backup plan, a secret. I became obsessed with this idea. I spent hours thinking about my mother, her habits, her routines, her secrets. She had a private safe deposit box at a bank across town. I only knew about it because I had to pick something up from it for her once, years ago. She had been very secretive about it. She told me it was just for important family documents. But what if it was more than that? What if it was where she kept her escape fund? It was a long shot, a wild guess. But it was all I had. I told Ms. Albright about it. She said it was interesting, but we would need a warrant to get access to it. And we did not have enough evidence to get one. Not yet. I felt like I was hitting a wall. We had enough to save me, but not enough to get justice. I felt frustrated, helpless. Then I had another idea. It was risky. It was probably stupid. But I was desperate. I needed to talk to Clara. I knew the police would not let me see her. I knew her lawyer would advise against it. But I had to try. I had to know if there was any part of my sister left in there. The sister I grew up with? The one who I used to protect from bullies on the playground? Or was she completely lost? Was she just a puppet for our parents? I wrote her a letter. I did not mention the evidence I had found. I did not accuse her. I just asked her one question. Why? I wrote about our childhood, about the times we were a team. I asked her if she remembered. I gave the letter to Ms. Albright. I asked her if she could get it to Clara's lawyer, Mr. Davenport. She was hesitant. She said it could backfire. But she saw the look in my eyes. She agreed to try. We waited. For days there was nothing. I started to think it had been a mistake. That Clara had just thrown the letter away. Then, one evening, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Mr. Davenport, Clara's lawyer. He sounded tired. My client received your letter, he said. She has agreed to see you, against my advice. He told me he could arrange a supervised visit at his office. The next day. My heart pounded in my chest. This was my chance. My only chance to get through to her. I did not know what I was going to say, but I knew I had to look her in the eye and ask her why she had tried to destroy my life. The next day, I went to Mr. Davenport's office. It was in a tall glass building downtown. I felt sick with nerves. I was led into a conference room. Clara was already there, sitting at the table. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. Her eyes were red and swollen. She would not look at me. Mr. Davenport sat at the head of the table. You have 30 minutes, he said. Then he just sat there, watching us. The silence was heavy. I did not know where to begin. Clara, I said. My voice was hoarse. She flinched when I said her name, but she still did not look at me. Why did you do it? I asked. She was silent for a long time. I could see her hands trembling in her lap. They told me to, she finally whispered. Her voice was weak, broken. They said it was the only way. They said we would all go down if I did not do what they said. I leaned forward. They told you to blame me? I asked. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were filled with tears. She nodded. Mom's idea, she said. She said you were strong, that you could handle it. She said it was the most believable story. The troubled sister manipulated by the smart, quiet brother. Every word was a confirmation of what I already knew, but hearing it from her mouth made it real in a new, more painful way. She helped you write the diary, didn't she? I asked. Clara nodded again, tears streaming down her face. She told me what to write, she said. She would sit with me for hours. She made me practice my story over and over again. She was not a monster. She was a victim, a pawn in our mother's sick game, just like me. But she had still made a choice. She had chosen to sacrifice me to save herself. Why, Clara? I asked again, my voice softer this time. Why agree to it? Why me? You know I would never do something like that. She finally broke down completely. Sobs racked her small frame. I was scared, she cried. Dad was in so much trouble. These men were calling the house. They were threatening us. Mom said this was the only way to fix it. She said if I did this, we could be a family again. A happy family. And she said you never really loved us anyway. That you always looked down on us. That you would be fine on your own. The cruelty of it took my breath away. My mother had not just planned to frame me. She had poisoned Clara against me. She had twisted my love and support into arrogance and disdain. She had isolated her own daughter, making her feel like this betrayal was her only option. I felt a surge of pity for my sister. She was weak, and our mother had exploited that weakness mercilessly. But pity was not enough. I needed her to do the right thing. She is lying to you, Clara, I said, my voice firm. She is not trying to save the family. She is trying to save herself. Clara looked at me, confused. What do you mean? She asked. I took a deep breath. It was time to play my card, the one I had been holding back. Mom has a secret, I said. A secret plan? She has been planning her escape for a long time. I told her everything. I told her about my aunt's story, about how my mother had bailed my father out before, how she resented him for it. I told her that this time my mother was not planning on saving him. She was planning on leaving him. She has a secret bank account, Clara, I said, looking her directly in the eye. An escape fund. I do not know where it is, but I know it exists. Once this is all over, she is not going to be there to pick up the pieces. She is going to disappear. She is going to leave you and Dad to face the consequences alone. She is using you, just like she is using me. Clara stared at me, her face pale. I could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear. She wanted to believe our mother. She wanted to believe in the promise of a happy family. But my words had planted a seed of doubt. That is not true, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. She would never do that. Wouldn't she? I asked. Think about it, Clara. Has she ever taken the blame for anything? Or does she always find someone else to point the finger at? Me, Dad, her sister, anyone but her. I could see the truth of my words dawning on her face. She knew I was right. She had seen it her whole life. Mr. Davenport cleared his throat. Time is up, he said. The meeting was over. I had said what I needed to say. Now, all I could do was wait and hope that the seed of doubt I had planted would grow. I went back to Ms. Albright's office and told her what had happened. She was impressed. That was a huge risk, she said, but it might just pay off. You have given her a reason to doubt her own mother, a reason to switch her allegiance. We spent the next few days preparing for my defense. We compiled all the evidence, the emails, my alibi for the coffee shop meeting. We built a timeline that showed my mother's manipulation and my father's desperation. We were ready for a fight. Then, 2 days after my meeting with Clara, Ms. Albright got a call. It was from Mr. Davenport. Clara wants to change her statement, he said. She is ready to tell the truth. The whole truth. He said she had confronted our mother. She had asked her about a secret bank account. Our mother had denied it, but her reaction had been enough. Clara finally saw her for who she was, a liar, a user, Betrayed by the one person she thought was on her side, she was ready to burn it all down. Clara gave the police a new statement. She told them everything: how our parents had coerced her, how our mother had orchestrated the cover-up and helped her write the diary. She gave them text messages and emails from our mother that supported her story. The case against me collapsed instantly. The district attorney's office dropped all the charges. I was free. But it was not over. Now the investigation was focused squarely on my parents. Miss Arway, Albright, and I knew we had to act fast. We took the information Clara had provided and the evidence I had found, and we went to the police. We showed them the C-Plan emails. We told them about the gambling debts and the loan sharks. And we told them about our suspicion: the secret bank account, the escape fund. With Clara's corroborating testimony, it was enough. The police got a warrant. They searched my mother's safe deposit box. They found it, just as I had suspected. There were stacks of cash, over $50,000. There were also fake passports for my mother with different names and photos. And there was a one-way plane ticket to a country with no extradition treaty. It was dated for the week after Clara's original sentencing was supposed to happen. It was undeniable proof. She had never planned on saving her family. She had planned on burying them. The day my parents were arrested was a strange day. I did not feel happy. I did not feel vindicated. I just felt empty. I watched the news report on television. I saw them being led out of their perfect house in handcuffs. My mother's face was a mask of cold fury. My father just looked old and defeated. The perfect facade had finally crumbled, and what was left was ugly and pathetic. The whole town was talking about it. The story was everywhere. The wealthy, respected couple who were actually criminals. The dutiful son they had tried to frame. The troubled daughter they had used as a weapon. The legal proceedings were long and messy. My father, broken and betrayed by my mother, confessed to everything. He took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his role in the embezzlement and conspiracy. With his cooperation, the case against my mother was ironclad. She tried to fight it. She hired expensive lawyers. She claimed she was a victim of her husband's addiction and her children's lies. No one believed her. The evidence was overwhelming. She was convicted of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and a dozen other charges. She was sentenced to 10 years in a federal prison. Clara also had to face the consequences of her actions. Because she had cooperated, she received a lighter sentence. She was given 2 years of probation and ordered to pay back the money she had stolen. I saw her at the courthouse after my mother's sentencing. She came up to me, her eyes downcast. "I am so sorry," she said. "I know that does not mean anything. But I am." I looked at her. My sister. We had been through a war together. A war started by our own parents. "I know," I said. And I did. I knew she was sorry. But I also knew that something between us was broken forever. The trust was gone. It could never be rebuilt. I visited my father in prison once. He looked like a ghost. He had aged 20 years. He apologized to me. He cried. He said he never wanted to hurt me. He said he was weak and my mother was strong and he had let her lead him down a dark path. I listened. I did not say much. What was there to say? His weakness had almost cost me my freedom. His apology felt hollow. I never went back. I never visited my mother. She wrote me letters from prison. They were filled with rage and blame. It was my fault. It was Clara's fault. It was my father's fault. It was never her fault. She was the victim, always the victim. I threw the letters away without reading them past the first few lines. She was a black hole of narcissism. I wanted nothing to do with her. After it was all over, I sold my share of the family house. The money from the sale went to pay for Clara's restitution. I packed up my apartment. I quit my job. There were too many memories in that town, too many ghosts. I needed a fresh start, a place where no one knew my name or my story. I moved across the country, to a city by the ocean. I found a new job. a new apartment. I started to build a new life, one that was quiet and simple, one that was mine. Sometimes at night, I think about them, my family, the house of cards they built, the lies they told. I think about the diary, that book of poison, written with my mother's words and my sister's hand. It was meant to be my cage, but in the end, it was the key that set me free. It forced me to see the truth that had been in front of me all along, that my family was not a sanctuary. It was a trap, and I had to break my own heart to escape it. I do not speak to any of them anymore. I get an occasional email from my aunt, Sarah. She tells me what is going on. Clara is working a new job. She is paying her debts. She is in therapy. My father is taking classes in prison. He is trying to better himself. My mother is still my mother. She is probably running a gang on her cell block. I do not know, and I do not care. They are characters in a story that is over. My story is just beginning. I am free. I am at peace. And I have learned the most important lesson of my life. Some families are not worth saving. Some families are meant to be left behind. I finally stopped trying to keep the peace. I just wanted peace. And I found it. Far away from them. Far away from the wreckage of their lies. I learned that blood is not thicker than self-preservation. It is a hard lesson, but it is one I will never forget.